India mandated E20 fuel from 1st April. That means every liter of petrol you buy now has 20% ethanol mixed into it. The government called it a big win, and on the surface, it sounds like a good idea. Use less imported oil, support local farmers, and cleaner fuel. But there are three things happening underneath that tells you a very different story. First, does it actually help reduce crude import? Second, even if fuel gets cheaper, does that actually help? Third, how this policy affects your food prices. By the end of this video, you will have a clear picture why ethanol blending as it is being done right now is not going to solve India's oil import problem. So let us start from the basics. Ethanol is alcohol, the same type of alcohol that is in beer or wine. It is made by taking sugarcane or corn, crushing it and letting it ferment. That fermentation process produces alcohol. You then collect that alcohol and mix it into petrol. E20 means the petrol you fill in your car or bike is 20% ethanol, 80% petrol. The reason why the government wants this is simple. India imports a huge amount of crude oil. We spend around 10 to 11 lakh crore rupees every year buying oil from other countries. That is dollars going out. If you replace some of that imported oil with ethanol made from Indian sugarcane, that money stays in India and Indian farmers earn more. On paper, it makes sense. So far, so good. But this is where the problem starts. Ethanol has one big problem. It carries about 33% less energy than petrol. What that means in simple terms is 1 liter of ethanol will not take your vehicle as far as 1 liter of petrol. At E20, the mileage drop is around 6%. Not huge, but for older vehicles, the drop can be up to 20%. You are filling the same amount, paying the same price, and going less distance. Now imagine that at higher blends, at E85, which the government is now discussing, you would need roughly 25 to 30% more fuel to cover the same distance. The vehicle runs, but it is less efficient, and no one is telling you this at the pump. So the blend is quietly eating into your mileage, while the pump price stays the same. That brings us to our first big question. Are we actually buying less crude oil? The whole point of ethanol blending is to reduce how much crude oil India imports. So let us check the numbers. In the financial year 2025, India's crude oil imports went up by around 1%. We imported 245 million metric tons of crude, and according to the IAS oil report, India's oil demand is projected to rise from 5.75 million barrels per day in 2025 to 6.6 million barrels per day in 2030. So did ethanol actually reduce imports? The Center for Social, Economic and Progress, an independent Delhi-based think tank, did the calculation. They are finding the entire ethanol blending program from 2014 to 2024 reduced crude imports by just 0.8% of India's total imports over that period, less than 1% over a decade. Now we have E20. Ethanol now replaces about 45 million barrels of imported oil every year. It sounds like a lot, but that is only 2.5% of total imports. The other 97.5% still comes from imported crude. But here is something even more important that does not get talked about. Ethanol can only replace petrol. Your car or bike runs on petrol. That is it. But think about everything else that runs on other types of crude oil products. Trucks run on diesel, plane runs on aviation fuel, ships use heavy fuel oil, factories use furnace oil, plastics, fertilizers, medicines, paints, chemicals, none of that can use ethanol. Petrol is only around 17% of what India produces from crude oil. So even if we went all the way to E100 and every single petrol vehicle in the country ran on pure ethanol, we would still be importing more than 83% of our current crude just to keep everything else running. And if you think we can at least eliminate that 17%, meet these guys. They are petrol exporters. India exports roughly 1/3 of the petrol it refines. They cannot sell E100 with a petrol level on it and ship it abroad. So the actual slice of crude that ethanol can realistically replace is not 17%. It is closer to 11%. And even that only works if every single Indian vehicle magically switches to pure ethanol overnight. Let's say government pulls it off. All petrol becomes E100, price drops, and everything works perfectly. Are we going to import less crude? Nope. And the reason comes down to how a barrel of crude actually works. When you refine a barrel of crude, you don't get to choose what comes out. You get diesel, petrol, aviation fuel, chemicals, all of it, in some proportions. Modern refineries can shift their product mix a little bit, but they can't eliminate categories. And in India's case, any extra petrol that ethanol frees up is just shipped abroad anyway. You cannot crack a barrel and ask it to skip the petrol. So if diesel, ATF or any other fuels demand grows, India still has to import more barrels. Those barrels still produce petrol as a byproduct. That petrol still has to go somewhere. somewhere, so it gets exported. The crude import number barely moves. Now at the second problem. If E100 makes fuel significantly cheaper per kilometer, that cheaper fuel triggers something called the Jevons paradox. In 1865, an economist named William Jevons noticed something strange. When steam engines got more efficient, people expected coal use to fall, but it went up because efficient coal was cheaper coal, and cheaper coal meant more people could afford to use it. The savings just created more users. The same thing happens with fuel. When petrol gets cheaper per kilometer, people who could not afford to drive daily start driving daily. Two-wheeler owners ride longer distances. Buyers who were on the fence buy a vehicle. Delivery companies expand their fleet. The efficiency gain gets consumed entirely by more usage. Studies have found that every improvement in fuel efficiency, vehicle travel increases even more than the efficiency gained. The savings cancel out. India's vehicle population is growing very fast. Even if blending saves some fuel per vehicle, the total number of vehicles and total kilometers driven is growing much faster. So crude consumption keeps rising no matter what the blend percentage is. Now on top of all this, the ethanol push has created a completely separate set of problems in the farm sector. To make more ethanol, you need more sugarcane. So the government started paying farmers a good guaranteed price for sugarcane and grain used in ethanol. Farmers responded exactly how you would expect. They switched their land to these crops because the money was better. But here is the issue. Every acre that goes to sugarcane is an acre that is not growing food. Farmers also started replacing oilseed crops with corn and sugarcane. Oilseeds are what edible oil is made from. India was already importing a lot of cooking oil. Now it is importing even more. So while we tried to reduce our dependence on oil imports, we accidentally increased our dependence on cooking oil imports. The ethanol push is creating food price pressure for a country where families spend a large share of their income on food. This is not a small side effect, and sugarcane farming itself uses a massive amount of water. India is already a water-stressed country, and to put a number on that, to replace that 11% of crude with ethanol, you would need to produce around 16% worth of ethanol by volume. Every liter of that ethanol needs roughly 2000 liters of water to produce. That is about 1000 times more than refining the same liter from crude. Bad news if you are addicted to water and can't live without it. So the policy was designed to reduce one import problem, created two new ones. This is known in economics as the cobra effect. The cobra effect comes from the British era India. The colonial government wanted to reduce cobras, so they paid people for every dead cobra they brought in. People started breeding cobras to collect the reward. When the scheme was cancelled, the breeders released the cobras. The snake problem got worse than it was before. A solution designed to fix a problem ended up making it worse. Everything we just talked about, the crude imports, the food prices, the Jevons effect, all of it connects to one big problem. India keeps spending more rupees to buy the same barrel of oil, and a bigger reason for that is the rupee keeps getting weaker against the dollar. You know, the rupee started at 3 rupees per dollar. Today it is sitting at 95. And here is the thing nobody explains properly. It never goes back. To learn why, watch this video next.